You know, it's nothing more exciting for an old guy like me to see a bunch of young folks getting active. So I'm excited about this. I'm very excited at Hank's leadership. I think his statement about what it means to be a good activist, he put it in terms of a good Democrat, but a person that cares about others. And you heard from Michael James. Michael is a very unique individual. And maybe the best thing to say about, just kind of summarize a little bit what he said, is that it's his whole life. When he talks about being a progressive person who cares about people, his whole life, the restaurant, the music part of the restaurant, the other stores that they own, the plays that they perform, the music there, the radio show, the idea is how do you help people in a variety of ways. So hats off to Michael. We know the governor's going to come shortly, but also Tom Dart is going to speak next. Tom is our sheriff, and he is one of the most interesting sheriffs you'll ever meet. Because you think of sheriffs as kind of often mean, tough people. And our guy Tom Dart is really unique. He's trying to help people everywhere he can. You'll hear from him in just a minute, but we're very lucky to have him. Now, I'm actually a candidate, but I have no opponent, so I guess I'm not really a candidate. But Hank asked me to talk about a number of things. Of course, we won't have time for all of them, but a little history about the movement that Michael kind of talked about, and a little bit about the job that I do in the county clerk's office, and particularly around election reform. So let me just say that I've had two careers, and those careers as an academic, teacher at Mundelein College before Mundelein became part of Loyola, so professor for a number of years, and still do some teaching. And the other career has been in politics. It was kind of an accident that during the 70s, the hair got shorter and started wearing suits, and all of a sudden I became a candidate. And so I was actually in the Chicago City Council for 12 years, and now I've been at county clerk since 1990. So that's a long time. So just very quickly about this formation of the progressive movement in our neighborhood. Back in the 70s, those of us who were active were really kind of upset with the old Democratic machine. Not that there weren't some good people in it, but it was a very top-down, boss-oriented thing. You had to be an insider, otherwise you got damaged. So finally, I ran for office, and it's incredibly important to have organization for two things. One, you have to have an organization to be able to win, and secondly, I'll touch on in just a second, to govern. But first, going back to that great election for us, we had an enormous number of people. First time we'd ever been able to put hundreds of people on the street and be competitive. And it was tough. Let me just give you one example of how the arrogance of the party helped us. That was the big famous snowstorm when Mayor Belandic, if you know Chicago history, didn't do enough. The public was enraged. And because at that point the machine was so cocky that they assumed he would easily run against this woman named Jane Byrne and win. If they weren't so cocky, they would have done what they usually do, and that's run another candidate named Jane Byrne or Jane Burney or something like that, and split the vote and easily would have won. Anyway, so on lunch out here, on the 1100 block of lot, not far from the Heartland Cafe, during this campaign, very tough campaign, it was pretty rough. Several of my precinct captains were assaulted a number of different times, beaten up, and but on that particular day, the buses couldn't get down Lunt because the snow was so bad. Much worse than this winter, by the way. Much, much worse. So we had an idea, okay, because some people who lived on Lunt called the Democratic Party office, the old Democratic Party, which was really the political headquarters, not the alderman's office. And they basically said, we're not going to clean your street, you guys vote independent. So we jumped on the idea, we got 50 people out there with shovels, worked all day, and cleared the street so the bus could get by. Just kind of a symbol of what citizen action could do. Anyway, after a long, tough fight, we actually won. First time we actually beat the old machine in the Rogers Park area. But then the critically important thing was, if you're going to govern, and if you're going to govern successfully, when the clout is against you, so to speak, okay, the mayor's against you, the city council's against you, the bureaucracy's against you. They want to see you fail so they can beat you in 4 years. We don't have time to go into it, but so the bottom line is our way of dealing with that problem is we built community clout, which is really a flourishing democracy. And all of a sudden, things were so exciting. We had, for the first time, we had an advisory committee. We had a full-time automatic office. We had a zoning board with community members. In fact, my the person head of my opponent's campaign was head of the Building and Zoning Committee. Block clubs flourished everywhere. And that became a real local democracy. The Parks and Beach Committee that's still flourishing, the Arbor Day Committee that plants stuff everywhere. So that was a way that we could govern successfully, which we did, otherwise I never would have been reelected. And so, again, we won again, and then finally, when I moved on to county clerk, we were able to elect Joe Moore, and that was the only time that Mayor Daley's appointed candidate ever lost. In all these years, Mayor Daley's appointed a lot of candidates. At this time, he appointed somebody else, but we wanted Joe Moore, and so we were able to win. Now let me just jump quickly, because we don't have a lot of time. The county clerk's office is actually exciting, and I'm not going to talk much about it, but my passion is two things. Number one, because I do believe in government. I mean, the difference I have between some people in the other party is I don't want to see government destroyed. I don't want to see government minimized. I want efficient government, but I want to prove to people that you can run an efficient office. And the county clerk's office has returned money, usually about $2 million every year since I've been clerk. Productivity is way up. We always make fun of public employees, when in fact they're far more productive than most people in the private industry. So we really want to, it used to take an hour to get a birth record, now it can take you 3 or 4 minutes. So that's important. The other passion is democracy and trying to make it work. And it's not easy these days. So over the years we've been able to do things including bringing voter to Illinois, bringing early voting, which we pushed through just a few years ago, bringing teen judges. More recently you read about, and the governor hopefully would brag about that, he passed a number of good laws last year, including the 17-year-old vote. In the last 2 weeks, we've had 5,000 young people, mostly 17-year-olds, some 18, who've registered. That's suburban Cook County alone, and several thousand others in the city of Chicago. Now, we'll see how many vote, but the fact is they were coming out in droves to register, which is also very exciting. So the nice thing is that we're seeing voter suppression around the country. Unfortunately, in too many red states. And when people are afraid of the voters, they tend to pass laws to make it more difficult. Now we see things happen in Ohio, of course we see things in North Carolina. And these are sad because I think, as Michael said, I think Hank said, the key is you want people to participate. You want people to know they can do something different. Many of you who may be cynical or frustrated, and we should be certainly skeptical, if not cynical, we should be skeptical of elected officials, we should be skeptical of those who make promises and don't deliver. We want, as Hank said, we want to be active and we can do things. Some of us, Michael and I, we've been around long enough to see times in history when people really got excited and came out. For example, we were here in 1983 and 1987, when there's an incredible turnout of the public, which made a difference, which allowed, in this case, Harold Washington to become mayor. We saw it also in 1992, when Bill Clinton was elected. More young people voted that year than in a long time since. We saw it, of course, for President Obama. So there's been times like that when people really come out and you see the great benefits of that. So there's just so much that can be done, and right now there's a lot of things going on to make actually Illinois much more friendly to voters. So we're giving lots of options to people, a lot of improvements. Something, again, that the governor did recently is something called online voter registration, and maybe he'll talk about it. It may not sound sexy, but it's catching up with the modern age. Instead of making people fill out all this paper, come this summer, that anyone, but particularly young people, be able to grab their phone, grab a tablet, and simply register online. It sounds a simple idea. When California did it before the 2012 presidential, about 300,000 or 400,000 people registered in the last 2.5 weeks. So there are things that can be done in a state where we want to expand the franchise, the opposite of some of the states who want to make it harder for people to vote. So there's great things that young people can do. There's some challenges, and there's some things that I'm not going to discuss, but there's some real difficult challenges about our democracy, particularly the money in politics that Michael referred to. But there are great things we can do if we work together. And so I encourage all of you to be as active as you want to be. Sometimes because a lot of people don't participate, frankly gives you a better chance to do a lot. So I've been lucky to have a lot of getting paid to do things I believe in for a long time, and working with people like I mentioned, Michael James, Tom Dart, I see the governors come in, the governor and I go way back. In fact, we used to get together, if you remember this, Pat, we used to talk, okay, now let's, because there weren't many reformers around. And Pat was one, and I was allegedly one. And so there'd be all these offices. So, well, Pat, are you going to run for this? No, why don't you run for, I'll run for this. And we kind of talk about that. So I'll do this. And then I became the accidental mayor, okay? And then a few years later, I don't want to call it accidental, but Pat became the governor. And thank God he's turned things around for us. So thanks again to Hank and to the Democrats here. We don't have to put down Republicans. The bottom line is we know what we believe in, and we need to make sure, okay, that we care about average people. Okay, I think that's the fundamental thing. We really want to make things better for average people. We're not just out to see the few get their goodies. And it's easy when you want to have the few benefit. It's a real challenge when you want to see everybody benefit, including, as Michael said, people of different political persuasions, different racial persuasions. So thanks for inviting me, and good luck to the young Democrats here. I know you got a great future. Thank you.